I have to remember to turn that on since Jared's not in here. And if I don't, it doesn't get recorded. It didn't get recorded last week. And John told me I had to teach the lesson over again. I said, I'm not going to do that. So, but anyway, we got it going now. So, here's what Moeller explains as far as this definition of the emergency church. He says, it is the worldwide of postmodernism. It denies the possibility of or need for scriptural truth. It affords the movement an opportunity to hop, skip, and jump throughout the Bible and the history of Christian thought to take whatever pieces they want from one theology and attach them, like doctrinal post-it notes, to whatever picture they would want to draw. And that's how Moeller explains this emerging church. And if you look around, even in the churches of Christ, you see a lot of things, modernism, that's taking place. My grandson, because he goes to Oklahoma Christian, he's been going to Edmond Church of Christ. Now, I've been chastising him pretty good about that. He says, well, I like it. And I said, what is it you like about it? You like the donuts and the coffee that is taken into the classroom? Or just what do you like? Well, my friends are going over there. And that sometimes happens. Young people will go where their friends go and everything. But they don't really think about the doctrinal issues the way that they should. And you look at the various churches of Christ and you see different things that's taking place. I've said before that if you see something in the denominational world, within 5 years, you're going to see it in the church. And that's a sad thing. Because some of the churches, you look at the large churches of Christ, and their goal is not so much teaching the scriptures, but their goal is numbers. And they don't really think about, well, what's important? And what's important is the spiritual growth, not the numbers. Yeah, we like numbers. We're growing here. But we should hope that the growth comes with spiritual growth as well. That people that come here desire to know the scriptures. They desire to want to know what God expects. There can be no changing of the Word of God, which is the basis for sanctification and the means for spiritual growth. Any comments?
When you look at the church today, and you are right when you say that they're looking more at the numbers than they're looking at the spiritual growth, and that's one of the things that God had a problem with David. When David wanted to know how many men, women, when he censored the people. And God said, no, you don't. The king is not supposed to do how many horses he got, because what you are doing, you're putting your reliance in those things instead of putting your faith and trust in God. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I might get this wrong, Joab told him, you shouldn't do that. And God warned him.
Yeah.
And because of that, God struck down certain part of the children of Israel with one angel. And the angel was more or less dragging his sword through and killing people. And well, you have to read the whole story. Yeah. But it displeased God. And David realized this. And God said, well, you got three choices. We can take care of this now, or you can let the people take care of you, or you can let me take care of you. And they came to the point that David trusted in God. Yeah. Whatever your will is, that's what I want to do. So we got to be careful how we look at the church. If we're looking at it more from a physical point, we're losing out on spiritual things. And I believe that when the churches go toward more physical things, you're going to find a lack of spirituality in the church. Because when they come, they only want to come for physical.
That's true.
Not spiritual.
That's true. It amazes me, and we're all guilty of it. Sometimes we'll use the phrase, I'm going to church. We forget the fact that we are the church. And so we're not going to church, we're going to worship with the saints, or we're going to assemble with the saints. And but we understand what an individual is saying when they say we're going to church. Noah?
Since the world is already judged, people in the church seem to forget that the remnant comes out of that group, not the whole world.
I have my first hospital rep when I worked for Pfizer. He's a good man, but he's Catholic. But every once in a while he says something that's profound. He said, he put on Facebook the other day, he said, it looks like we're living in a Sodom and Nineveh world today. God is going to judge each and every one of us as individuals, not as the world. You see things on Facebook, people praying that America will go back to Christianity. And I've said many times, America has never been a Christian country. Most people believe in God, but they don't believe in the accuracy of the scriptures. They think, well, those scriptures applied way back then. They don't apply it to us today. So, but anyway, let's go to lesson 4. And does anybody need a copy of lesson 4? I had them out there on the back, but I do have some here if you need them. Anybody need one?
I don't seem to have it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Eugene, you got one?
I got one.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about a life of purity and holiness. We've already kind of said that we live in a world that does not have the same values as the Bible demands. Christians, therefore, have a choice to make. And that is, we can decide whether to change and conform to holy living, or we can continue to live as the world lives. We must decide whether to attempt to fit into the ways of society around us. If we choose society, then obviously we've made the wrong choice. The question is, we will dress like they dress and not like God instructs. You look around people today and you see the way they dress. I literally am bothered when I go up to a fast food restaurant window, or I go to the barber shop and I see these young women with nose rings and piercings in their eyebrow and tattoos all over their body and everything. I don't have a problem if you want to get a tattoo, but you have to ask yourselves, why do you want to show them off to the world? Are you trying to draw attention to yourselves? You remember Peter was talking about dressing appropriately, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. When Jeremiah was younger, he had his hair dyed purple and everything. I was sitting in the elder's office, and he came in there, and I said, Jeremiah, I said, Peter was talking about women when he said that they should dress appropriately, but I think that applies to men as well. And I have to ask you, why did you dye your hair purple? Who are you trying to draw attention from? And he says, are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm not kidding at all. So Jeremiah doesn't speak to me very much. But, why will people do this? And you see men doing the same thing. And you see this transsexual society now, this LBGQT, and I think they're trying to figure out another letter to add to all of this. What is the purpose of all this, Arthel?
I can say, it started, I would say a long time ago, but people want to be different. Not really understanding they are different. No individual, like even the twins, they're different. Each individual is different. But when you're trying to be different other than what the norm should be, what you should be, we try to be different from that so that we can stand out. We don't have no justification for it. We're just looking at the world and seeing what the world does. But we have to follow God instead of following the world.
Well, in one way they want to be different, but in the other way they want to be like the crowd.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, what's one of the trends today with women and everything? Young women, I'll say. But I see this with some of the older women too, and I think, man, have you looked in the mirror lately? They wear these spandex that is so tight that nothing is hidden from you. And it's embarrassing. I remember when Jay was living and we walked into Uptown Grocery and there was this tall really good-looking lady, and she was in spandex from head to toe. And Jay looked at me and he said, "Can you believe that?" I said, "No, let's go down another aisle so we don't have to look at it." And then the other thing you see with women wearing really short skirts. What's the purpose of that? You know, when you see them walking around tugging like this, or if they're sitting in the seat tugging, there's something wrong with that. And our society was not designed to do that. Yes, Eugene?
I'm a crazy person because I like to listen to news shows, okay? But how often do you see a woman who doesn't have her legs crossed because they're wearing these short skirts?
Oh, yeah, more and more. Yeah, Rick?
I always like to go back to my favorite one is back about 15, 20 years ago, the Psychiatric Society said that 73% of the American people suffer from some kind of mental disorder. 73%, and I look at these people walking the street, and I says, I can see the 73%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our society is sad, and as Christians, we have to walk around with blinders. Yes, Nola?
Worse than that. I mean, that's bad enough. But there's something about women today, on TV especially, they can't button up anything in front because it's hanging out. Why? It used to be that was considered what was it called? Exposure.
Yeah.
And you would get pulled over, pulled into the police station. And now it's commonplace.
Yeah.
Where are the parents?
That's true. But look at, I mean, it's not just women. We have to also talk about young men as well. How many young men do you see today that has these big holes in their ear and they just keep expanding those holes? To me, that's the most unattractive thing you can see in both men and women when they do these things. So the question is, are we going to dress like society or are we going to dress like God instructs? God instructs. Yes, Eugene.
The liberal society, all these philosophies and salons that Benjamin Franklin went to when he was trying to woo the French, etc., the elite people, okay? The way the women's dress at that time was to almost show their full breasts, okay? And that's, so they gave us the French Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
And all the stuff that flows through it, all the immorality that goes along with it.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments? All right. Another thing we need to talk about is, will we indulge in all kinds of wrong activities and not the kind that God expects? When you look at television now, how many hours do we spend in front of the television? When in fact we could spend some of that time studying the scriptures. And when we do spend time with television, or when you go to the movies, are you no longer bothered by the fact that the rating is R or above? You know, if it's rated R, that there's going to be a lot of profanity in there. There may be nudity in there. There may be sex scenes in there. And is that something you still want to indulge in? Most of us, particularly men, when we're young, we have I guess I better say just the fact that our hormones are raging. And so we're attracted to young ladies, maybe in some ways that we shouldn't be attracted to young ladies. But as a Christian, we've got to control our desires. We've got to control our thoughts. And some of the ways to control our desires and thoughts is to avoid these things such as the R movies, the profanity, the nudity, and all of that stuff, whether it be television, whether it be movies. Even books today have a lot of profanity in them. My brother, because we have a Bengal cat, there was a writer I think he's in Minnesota, and I forget the exact title of the book, but my brother sent me a message and said, look at this. And I said, I want one of those. So he bought one for me for Christmas. I began reading that book, and I could not believe the amount of profanity, using the F word and everything else. And so put that book away. But,
What's
Yes.
sad is you get cartoons now, you can't watch cartoons either.
oh, I know.
In things that are thrown in to catch the little ones.
Yeah, Eugene?
I just got back from 2 weeks in Alaska. I did.
I wondered where you went,
Flew to Fairbanks.
and you didn't invite us.
Yeah.
You don't
It was
want
only like 200 miles from the Arctic Circle.
Yeah,
I didn't make it there. And then took the land tour down to Seward and then the cruise back. And I learned more about nature in the things that I went to see, you know, like I did get to see one small grizzly bear up there, okay, but you know, when people are telling you about bears, they're talking about when the bears come in to heat, whatever, they don't mate with just one person, you know, they mate over and over again. And that's why the male bear doesn't know whether he's the father of the cubs or not, and that's why he'll kill them all if he has the opportunity. Right?
Yeah.
And then another thing I went to was really nice was one of the guys who won the Iditarod years ago. He's still involved in all of that and sponsors other people to do it, and so you can go there and you actually see the sled dogs and that sort of. They say the same thing. They don't use huskies; they use a different, smaller type of dog, and they breed them to control, because they have the characteristics of being a sled dog, and they want them to be the same color and on size or smaller, and so they have to watch very carefully how they mate, etc. So the point is, throughout nature, that's the way God created us and all the other creatures that He made, with this desire to mate, and so you're not going to get that out of people, but like you say, we have to learn how to control it when it's appropriate.
We have to learn how to control it, and as God said in the scriptures and everything, that that's why He ordained marriage. The man is to be chosen one woman and one woman only, and that's for life. That's the way it's to be. And so one of the things I didn't mention here is we will talk like they talk and not like God instructs, and that we kind of already alluded to that, using profanity and words that we should not be using. Keeping our mind. A good way to look at that is you should always be praying that God would give you a pure heart, that God would give you a clear mind so you're thinking on spiritual things rather than worldly things. Okay? Also, we have to ask ourselves the question, will we then identify with the world around us so that they will not hate us?
You can't control that. Because if you're doing what God has commanded you to do, they're gonna always hate you. They're
That's
gonna
true.
always come up with something that they don't agree with. And you're looking at a society now that you really have to be woke and understand where you're coming from. People got pronouns and all these things. And a man is not a man anymore. He's this, he's that. I'm him, I'm her. Well, no, those are things that the world try to teach you. But we'll learn of the things that are of God. And what God has set the standard for, that's what we must follow.
That's true. That's true. But especially when we were younger, remember the crowd that we ran around with, and when you tried to say that, well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to consume alcohol. I don't want to smoke cigarettes or consume tobacco. And yet they still continue to try to influence you to do that. Mm-hmm. Did you ever yield to that? Probably, maybe to some extent, and maybe to a great extent, just because of the fact that they were your friends and you wanted to continue to be friends with them. Because you felt if you didn't do what they wanted, then they would ostracize you. And yes, Obita?
Finish your statement.
No, go ahead.
No, finish your statement.
I'm through.
No, it wasn't. Okay. No, I was just gonna say when I was working, I had to also, like you mentioned, to get myself like at break time, They want to talk about other people or do this and that, things that was wrong, and I found myself just getting my Bible out and studying, during that time, or staying away from them because they can influence you, and they would always, you Church of Christ, goody two shoes or whatever, and I said, they talk about Jesus Christ too, so I wouldn't worry about it, but it is, hard, and I would come home and talk to Rathel about it, and said, and he said, that's why you have to continue to surround yourself with Christians, and the older teach the younger. And I had Mayor Binkley, you all know Brother Binkley, he comes here sometime, that him and his wife introduced me to Rathel, and she was a child of God, and she's the one that got me the job there. And so we would just talk to each other, and she said, honey, you need to stay away from them, just be around Christians and people that's encouraging and going the way we're supposed to go, God's way. So,
Yeah.
but it does
Okay.
happen.
Okay, Rathel? And then I'll get Donna.
When you talked about peer pressure, you're around your crowd, and they want to smoke, they want to do this. Well, I feared my parents more than I feared them. And I said, no, I don't want no part of that. I'm going home. And I always went home because of the fact that I knew I didn't want to indulge in that. And I knew when I got home, we didn't have telephones or things that, that people got today. My parents, they know if I was misbehaving. They know if I did something wrong. Because, I was a child. But when it came to my friends, I wasn't peer pressure into smoking or anything like that or doing somebody wrong. I said, no, I don't want no part of that.
Yeah. Okay, Donna?
In junior high and high school, I took as a compliment when I was called Miss Goody Two Shoes quite often because I didn't do the smoking and drinking and wearing the super duper short dresses and stuff like. They kind of looked at me. Okay, well, I took it as a compliment when they called me. It didn't bother me at all.
Eugene?
Back in the day, most people wanted to be cool. They wanted to fit in, whether it was smoking or whether it was your hairstyle or the way you dressed or all of that. But it's today, now that we have the cell phones and the computers, the social media and all of this, it's affected people more than it ever has before. Because look at all the bullying that's going on. Look at all the kids, high school age or even pre-high school age, that are actually killing themselves because people are bullying them on their phones or on the computer, etc. And it's really tragic.
It is. I did not become a Christian until between my freshman and sophomore year in college. I went to several different religious organizations. My class was 13 students, 8 boys and 5 girls. Of that 13 students, half of them are dead already. One of them actually committed suicide by putting a shotgun up to his chin. I've never been back to a class reunion because in school I was abused. And I just had no desire to want to go back and see those individuals. But I would tell you, when I was not a Christian, I kissed my first girl in the first grade because I like girls. I kissed my first teacher in the 3rd grade. Oh, Miss Marple, she was so pretty. And I really adored Miss Marple. And there was a couple of us boys that would kiss the girls at lunchtime, and she said that if any of you kiss a girl again, you will have to come up before class and kiss me. Well, that was the wrong thing to say because I liked Miss Marple. So sure enough, I had to go before the class and kiss Miss Marple. But she spoiled it all by getting married. My point is that before we became a Christian, we did a lot of things until we became a Christian. And even after we became a Christian, because we were new converts, we still did some of those things. We were not fully matured. And that's why the Hebrew writer and Paul and some of the others talk about the fact that we have to study the scriptures to grow spiritually. And there are scriptures I can remember when I first became a Christian. I had one thought, but as I continue to mature, I have a completely different thought today on that verse. because I now understand that I need to know who's talking, who they're talking to, what they're talking about, and look at the whole context and not just one verse. The problem is still today, many people who have been Christians for years still look at maybe one or two verses and apply that to their lives in such a way that it's wrong. They need to grow spiritually. And that's why it's important to look at the Scriptures and understand what the Scriptures say. So I want to look at, when we talk about identifying with the world around us, or living the life of Christ, the world's going to hate us. I want you to turn to John, the 17th chapter. And we're going to begin reading at verse 13. This is Jesus talking here. John 17, beginning at verse 13. He says, "But now I come to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the word has hated them, because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world." Jesus is talking about his disciples, sending his disciples into the world, and preaching and teaching the Word of God. So the world usually hates those who are different from them. But if we want to be pleasing to God and acceptable to Him, we must live as God directs, even when it goes contrary to the world. Turn to 1 John, and let's see what John has to say in 1 John and chapter 2, in verses 15 through 17. John says, "Do not love the world, nor are the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it, but he who does the will of God abides forever." So that's what we have to ask ourselves. Are we going to continue to live in the world as the world dictates? And as a result, we will not see eternal life in heaven, but we will see eternal life in hell. And I know that that's not the case with you folks. But when you look at people that we should be out trying to reach, people we should be trying to teach, to help them realize their lost condition, this is the urgency. You have to remember that God desires that all mankind be saved. And you and I are the instruments to help Him in this endeavor. And if we fail, then we have to ask ourselves, who do we know that we might have helped be saved, but because we did not speak up, will be lost? Jack.
Most of those people that their soul is in a lost condition, they know it.
They do. They don't want to accept it, but they do know it. My
They
next
don't
door.
want you pointing it out, though.
Do what?
They don't want you pointing it
But
out,
you
though.
should.
That's
You're
true.
pointing the finger at them. And
That's very true.
Should anyway.
Even my next door neighbor, I don't know, she must be atheist. I know they don't go to any kind of worship service. She knows that I go to worship service. We talk about it all the time. But she's never given any indication that she is interested. She just accepts the fact that I have a position. My association, every year, once or twice a year, they have a social get-together. Now, let me ask you, when do you think that social get-together occurs? Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And I've sent them message after message that you will never see me at that association get-together because I'm going to be worshiping. When I was preaching in Olathe, Kansas, our son and daughter was in music. They loved to be in chorus in school. And the teacher made a comment to them that we're going to have this specific recital on a Wednesday night. And if you're not here, you will flunk the course. So I met with the teacher and I said, I'm going to tell you something right now. My children will be in Bible class with me on Wednesday night. And if you drop their grade in any way because of that, you and I will be before the board. And he did not do that. But we as Christians have to take a stand with this stuff.
Exactly.
If we don't, the world is going to overrun us. And so let's look at, let's think about this. Purity and holy living are necessities. And there are no excuses that are accepted. Holy living is a direct command of God. Turn to 1 Peter, if you will. Hello. Now I want to look at chapter 1. And we're going to look at verses 13 through 16. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 through 16. Peter says this. He says, therefore gird up the loins of your mind and be sober, and rest your hope fully upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lust as in your ignorance. But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, conduct yourselves throughout the time of your stay here in fear, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. So, when God speaks then, we obviously are to obey. He expects us to make holiness a guide for our lives. And this is not anything new here with what Peter's saying. This goes all the way back to Leviticus. The theme of Leviticus is be holy as I am holy. He was talking to the Israelites at that time. And it applied to them, it applies to us this day. He expects us to make holiness a guide for our lives. And he never requires more than we can do. He makes allowances for our weaknesses, but he does not make allowances for our rebellion. So if holiness is required, we need to know what it is so we can pursue it and not the world. So our time is about up, but let's ask the question, what is holy living?
If you follow Christ,
Follow Christ?
you will live holy.
Okay. The following are synonyms for holy. Holiness, hallowed, and you hear oftentimes in prayers, hallowed be thy name. Holy is thy name. Saints, sanctification. The basic idea of holy is to be cleansed and set apart for service to God. So next week we're going to begin by looking at holiness in the Old Testament, and then we'll look at holiness in the New Testament. But I'm not going to get into those because I know our bell is about to ring. But let me ask a question. Because we've been in this classroom for a while, we've adjusted the ducts for the air in here. But how's the temperature right now? Is it a little warm for you, or is it comfortable? It's comfortable? Just right? Okay. So I'll not make any changes, but I asked that question because I'm standing up here sweating.
Got to get you a little fan.
Closer to the ceiling.
That's true. I'm close to the ceiling. And I'm also doing the talking.
You're a hothead.
I'm what?
You're a hothead.
Hothead? Well, Lawrence has said that quite a bit. I told her that she's been correcting me for 54 years, and she said no, 55. So that's our second bell. So we will continue this conversation next week. I appreciate your comments this morning. This is how we learn together. So thank you so much.
Lisa had the same idea.
I'm trying to be bright on a cloudy day. What can we say?
I don't,
Purple haze.
I've gotten to where I don't even watch Newsmax, I don't watch Fox, and I don't watch anything Kamala or Walsh does, because I've already seen that both of them are hypocrites. In fact, it's a known fact now that Kamala is trying to pull a lot of things from Trump's Facebook, or his game plan. She's already talking about tax breaks, about controlling the money. She's not gonna do any of that. She's a chameleon.
Unless something else comes up, we have to.
Do what? Oh, thank you, Nola.
Spiffy, yeah, you're spiffy. Yeah. Is that them,
Right now, I've got 3 weeks. But I don't think that and then my sister, I something like that. It's different ones. If it ain't me and my sister,